My guest today is Lisa Manyon, the business marketing architect. She is known for creating million-dollar results. Lisa is the founder of Right On Creative, the host of the podcast Your Message Matters, and a best-selling award-winning author. She teaches, trains, and transforms lives on two core topics: healing with love, which is based on her best-selling award-winning book, Spiritual Sugar, and marketing with integrity. Now, that's a strategy that focuses on taking the pain out of planning and the pain points out of marketing. She's joining me live today from her home in magical Ashland, Oregon, where she also writes for Southern Oregon Magazine and the Southern Oregon Business Journal. I'm really excited for you to hear her hero up story, so let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to Hero Up, the podcast that inspires and challenges you to step up and become heroic in all areas of your life. I'm your host, Tony Stark Polici, and it's my goal to give you practical, actionable advice and insights into copywriting, mindset, lifestyle, and impact. On this show, we'll explore how to create compelling and persuasive marketing messages, and I'll give you clever tips to make you stand out as a hero. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a coach, or a creative, this podcast is for you. So, let's dive in. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Hero Up Podcast. You guys just heard the intro to my amazing guest today, Lisa Manyon. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited about finally getting a chance to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony. It's really great to connect.
Well, I want to start off with my first question is, what do you do and why do you do it?
Well, I do two things, Tony. I teach, train, and transform on two topics. I'm passionate about them both. The first one is marketing with integrity, and that's through my business, Right On Creative. And I basically take the pain out of planning and the pain points out of marketing. So I've created a communication framework called the Challenge Solution and The Challenge Solution and Invitation Communication Framework. It would be good if I could say my own formula, right? And I help people create marketing messages with integrity by focusing on passion points instead of pain points. So we basically amplify the paint a picture of possibility, amplify those passion points, and connect people with exactly what they're desiring in life. And I'm really excited about that. And the other thing is healing with love. And this is my own personal hero's journey story where I faced cancer. I'm now a cancer thriver and have written a book called Spiritual Sugar, The Divine Ingredients to Heal Yourself with Love. And it became an Amazon bestseller and also recently received the American Writing Award in the spirituality category.
Oh, congratulations. That is fantastic.
I'm so blessed. I'm proud of that. It's my love letter to humanity is what it is.
That is amazing. So I love the approach that you take to your business. We, as a copywriter, I'm very familiar, are both familiar with, you got to identify the pain points. And your approach is focusing on the passion points, which is a whole lot different than pleasure points. I mean, passion is a whole different emotional level, right?
It is. And, for me, I just was watching what everyone else was doing. And I tend to attract people who are mission driven and multi-passionate and really are tapped in very deeply with their values. And what was happening was a massive values disconnect with a lot of the pain point marketing. Now, it can be done well, as you well know, and it can also be done in ways that don't feel good and that actually perpetuate buyer's remorse and chargebacks and return rates. And that's basically what was happening when people started coming my way, decades ago, saying, Lisa, we've got all the pain points dialed in and we've written this content, but it's not converting. Our clients aren't coming our way. And I said, well, let's just back up a little bit. And when was the last time that someone really poked at all your pain points and agitated those and you thought, hey, I want to do business with this person, right? So there were just some ways that people were using those formulas, which I think are antiquated. They can work. I'm not saying they can't. They were using them in ways that were a little bit more manipulative than the people that I attract wanted to be. Period. And so we just softened that approach and flipped the script and really started tapping into the values. And I would just ask people, hey, let's back up the bus. How do you want to be spoken to? And how are you going to respond? And don't you think that your clients or potential clients deserve that same respect and that same, dignity? Let's treat people like people, not numbers, because oftentimes what happens is And you know this, people get very excited about the sale and they want to make sales and they get a little bit, amped up about it. And sometimes the copy will then repel as opposed to attract. And so we just want to create a very delicate balance there. And I often say that our copy is actually queen. It is the feminine energy of the marketing mix where the strategy is king and it's more masculine. So I flipped the script there as well on that age old advertising and copywriting adage that copy is king. I believe it's queen. So I do things absolutely completely the opposite of most people. And I've got some pushback, but the people that I work with love it and they get great results. And my philosophies and my approach has been known to make $1 million results. Now, I'm not a millionaire yet, but it's lined the pockets of many of my clients. So I'm happy for them.
Right. Let me ask you this. So are you familiar with archetypes? Is that kind of how this ties in with the archetype model, the 4 archetypes?
I am familiar with archetypes, but I don't specifically work with them that much. I do have something called the messenger quiz, which helps people identify their messenger style. And that's something that I've identified within the population that I work with. They're typically either a launcher, a leader, or a legacy creator when they come to me. And so they can take that quiz and determine where they are on that spectrum. There is some carryover from each of those types, but it then helps me see where they are in their business and helps them self-identify what they need to do to course correct to really dial in that message and strategy.
That's really fascinating, Lisa. So it sounds like an amazing process to really help people get clarity. Let me ask you, so in your career as a copywriter and a marketing genius, what have been some of the really big realizations that you had? Can you think of one that was like, wow, I love that you have this contrarian approach to things. One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people coming up to study, they want to study technique and they think that once they get technique, that they can do everything. And then they implement AI and now they've got technique and they think they've got the world by the short hairs. But, being in this industry for decades and having the benefit of experience and wisdom, like we come up with things. So share with me one of the aha moments or something that you had.
The biggest one was when I realized that pain points were actually repelling a lot of people and they were creating buyer's remorse and making people feel really bad after the fact. Because we do need to know what the problem is. We do need to know where people are so we can move them from where they are to where they want to be. But the agitating those pain points was where people were getting tripped up. They're like, well, why are we focusing so much on making people feel so bad about themselves or their situation and what they're lacking when in fact we could just flip that script and do that a little more differently? Because what was happening is it works. They get excited. They get in that emotional frenzy and they're like, oh, this person understands me and they're feeling my pain. Yay, I'm going to buy. And they feel like that's the only solution. But then after the fact, they realize, ooh, that really wasn't what I wanted or needed. Or on the flip side, what was promised was not actually delivered. The bait and switch. That's a big pet peeve of mine. I think that we need to keep it real. I think that people are people, not numbers. And if we don't treat people as such, it will be reflected in our bottom line.
What do you see as the biggest mistake that's still being made by people when it comes to marketing their products or services?
Well, I can tell you the biggest.
Does something stand out?
Yeah, the biggest energetic disconnect that I see is a disconnection from values. And I really do take things back to basics. In fact, I often will require that people go through a values exercise to really look at what matters most to them and how there's a values alignment between their personal mission statement and their business mission statement. Because if there isn't, and there's just a disconnect and people are going after the low-hanging fruit just to make a buck, that's also going to impact the ability to create long-term sustainable success.
So this process that you talked about, the leader, legacy creator, does this help your clients get in touch with those values to really identify them?
I think it might bring it to the forefront to their awareness, but it's not really a part of the process. It's really just a quiz. It's called the Messenger Quiz. It is on my site or at themessengerquiz.com, but it's basically self-identifying to see really where they are. And the launcher typically is someone who they've got the bright, shiny object syndrome and they've created a bunch of things, thrown a bunch of spaghetti at the wall. Nothing's really stuck yet. And they're kind of in that place where we need to figure out how we can hone in our message and our offers to get really clear to move into that leadership category, which is the next one. And the leader is someone who's really just ready to be the choice, not an option, period. They're done. They've, put in their due diligence and they're ready to really start positioning themselves for their legacy work. So then we move into the legacy creator, and that's someone who's ready to create their courses or write their book, or maybe already has, but are ready to amplify their publicity in some way. And they really want to get their message out in a big way. And there can be carryovers from each of those, Tony. I mean, there are some people who are leaders who are still in the launcher phase because they're multi-passionate creators. And I say that I'm a little bit guilty of that as well. I like to create. I have to stop myself sometimes and put myself on moratorium and say, hey, you already have a bunch of programs that you're not even selling. So why don't you just chill out and focus on that,
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that too. Absolutely. Earlier, when you said, how many millions of dollars you've created for other clients, I have the same experience where a lot of my projects and programs have been sitting on the shelf, in half stages of getting done because I put all of my time and energy into another client's project. So as I move into this phase of my life, those things are becoming more important. But of course, I was raising kids and other things too. So it was easier for me to focus on the stuff that I could put other people first. That was one of
Right.
the bad behaviors that I had, the things that I had to really step into and identify, like, what is at the root of this? Why do I put other people before me? But let's shift back to the kind of clients that you work with. Who is an ideal client for you? Can you describe that?
Yeah, this is kind of fun. And it's also different because I am an outlier. So the people that I serve are multi-passionate, mission-driven entrepreneurs and business owners. And I'm more of a specialty niche than an industry niche. So if I were to put all of my clients in one room together, you would have multi-million dollar business owners. You would have brick and mortar people. You would have healers and light workers. You would have course creators and authors and you name it, people who have membership organizations, and they'd be looking at each other thinking, what are we doing here? Because, when you look at it, you look at the standard avatar, people will say, go in, find out their psychographics, their demographics. What's everyone reading? Well, my people are not reading the same thing. I assure you this.
Yeah.
So the only two things that they have in common is they are completely turned off by pain point marketing. They just want to keep it real and have it values aligned. And then they also just want to make a really big difference in the world. So if I can get behind a project or a movement that someone is creating, and I think they're doing something really good in the world, we can play.
Well, that sounds like a really fun party, actually, to have all those clients in a room.
It is. I've never actually done that. That would be fun, though. Although, I don't know. I just have to sit back and watch them all interact and see how that went.
Yeah. Hey, let's shift for a minute here. I want to talk about a moment in your career where you hit a wall or something. Maybe there was a moment where you thought, what am I doing? Can I do this? I'm just going to quit and go get a job. Was there a moment like that in your entrepreneurial journey?
Like, which moment would you like to talk about?
There we go. That's an honest answer right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Being in business for yourself is not for the faint of heart. It just isn't.
That's for sure.
And, I remember when I was first starting out online, and I think when I launched one of my first information products back in the day, and I just had a really bad name for it. Well, I can't remember what it was now. And I was so excited because I'm like, okay, info products are where it's at. This is going to make me millions. And it just didn't. It just didn't. Bottom line. So, it made me think, well, should I be trying to do what everyone else is doing, or should I be focusing on my magic that I know because I have an advertising agency background and radio station background? I'm also a radio marketing master through the Radio Advertising Bureau. So prior to starting Right On Creative 20 years ago, I was working with businesses and helping with all facets of marketing. And the reason that I went into copywriting specifically was because when I resigned from the ad agency that I was working for, I had a non-compete. And at the time, I didn't have $5,000 laying around to buy out of it. So I was like, well, I'm just going to have to go global. And so that's what I did. I started really focusing on learning more about direct response marketing, because the advertising agency stuff was more Madison Avenue style. It was, short form and radio spots and TV spots and things like that, which I can write them all, and that's great. But when I started studying with, some of the best out there, I worked very closely with Lori Morgan Ferrero. I chose her as one of my first mentors because, first of all, she was the top female copywriter in the nation. And I'm like, if she could do it, I could do it. And so we partnered way back in the day when she had her agency, and we worked in her agency together, actually. So just a little bit of backstory. But um, yeah. So when I started learning about, I got really kind of excited about the idea of information products, passive income. If passive income is a total lie, there's nothing passive about it. It's leveraged income. You've got to put a lot of work in, and then hopefully it works. But in the case, I mean, I'm being transparent. My first information product did not fly. It was funny to look at. I could probably dust it off, and now I could clean it up and make it work. But back then it just was not happening. So there was that. And then sometimes it just gets a little isolating. I do work from home, even though I work with independent contractors and things like that. So that's also, there's a mental game that you have to really play to keep up with everything, and to not want to give up, and to not want to think, oh my, it might just be easier to go get a job.
Right. Yeah. In the work that, at least I'll speak for you and I, and Lori's great, by the way. Love her.
Yes, me too.
And red hot copy. So many times I would just like find an excuse to want to get out of my office, right? Like, don't I need to go to the store and get milk? Or don't I need to go get a haircut? Or doesn't the car need gas? I mean, anything. Working in isolation can be difficult. And it requires a lot of, discipline. So oftentimes people would say to me over the years, I can't even count it. Boy, it must be nice that your commute to work is, 15 steps down the stairs, right?
Right.
And it is. I mean, yeah. And there's challenges along with that too.
Exactly.
When I was working with Dean Graziosi, I would drive into his office 1 or 2 days a week, and he wanted me in there every day. And I refused to do that. I wasn't going to go drive 20 miles in rush hour traffic. It was like, no, thank you. But once I was there, we had an entire team, and that collaboration and that connection with other people, it really inspires creativity, and great things happened. But yeah, that is a challenge, so
Yeah.
Kids nowadays, and everybody wants things quickly, right? You've got all of these, what I call snake oil salesmen, and there's a lot of them in the AI space right now. Everybody's like, oh, you can just do this, do this, do this, do these 3 things, and you'll generate $500 a day. It's this simple. Buy my $10,000 course and I'll tell you how to do it. But nothing is ever that simple. At least that has not been my experience.
No,
So
and the instant experts on AI, I mean, I could just go down a rabbit hole on that. I was just recently asked to be on an AI panel, and I said, are you sure you want me there? Because I'm not 100% a fan. And they said, yeah, we want to hear what you have to say. And it was really fascinating because I'm not using AI to write copy. I think everyone should learn how to write really good copy before they outsource to AI or to a human, period. I think when you give your voice away to someone else without owning it, there are real issues. And with AI, even bigger issues with intellectual property and copyright infringement and all of this. And I've done a couple of blog posts about this. And what I think is really fascinating is, there's good people in the world and there's bad people in the world. And one of the people that reads my blog weighed in on one of my blog posts and said that they were at a cocktail party with a person who had been on Oprah several times, an author. And then they had a contract with a publisher, and they had given their outline of the book to the publisher. And the publisher went ahead and just rolled the outline through AI and had AI write a new draft and canceled the contract and went with the AI version. So there's a lot of weird things that are happening in the AI space. I know we're not really talking about that today, but I would like to really caution people about that. When you give your voice away to something else, that's an issue. And even with programs like ChatGPT, people don't realize that information isn't real time. They threw a bunch of information into the aggregate, cut it off at 2021. So it's not even actually up to date. The only time that up to date information gets into it, to my understanding, unless this has changed, is that if you throw your content into, say, ChatGPT, it will actually go into the public domain aggregate then, and other people can do prompts and pull your content out. So unless you know the specific settings to say, do not use, my content to train AI, you're just, it's the Wild West. So I'll get off my little soapbox there on that one. But
No, I love that. Nothing's off limits in this. We can talk about anything you want, and I like that because I think it's a really important issue, and everybody's just adopted it too quickly. Did you ever see the movie Jurassic Park?
I did not.
Okay, well, it's unfortunate because I wanted to make a reference, and it won't land the same without seeing it. But there's a scene in there where Jeff Goldblum he plays a scientist, but he's like an expert in chaos theory and they're sitting at the table and they're talking about the concept of the story. If you don't know it, is this guy has been able to regenerate dinosaurs from DNA that was trapped in mosquito. So he's taken the DNA, he's remade dinosaurs. Well, Jeff is like, you have the lack of humility that you have about what you're doing here is shocking. But you've stood on the shoulders of geniuses. You didn't put in the time and the effort that this requires. Like you stood on the shoulder of geniuses to do this. And you've unleashed this without having any kind of clue what the long-term consequences are. And, the long-term consequences was everybody died. But AI is the same way. You used a perfect term a minute ago. You said the wild, wild west. And that is exactly what this is right now. Everybody looks at this like, wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and look, I can just put in these prompts and generate this great sales page and all this copy. And I just got to modify it and take out the word evoke, or what is the other one that like ChatGPT likes to use? Embark. Let's embark.
Well, what's cracking me up is that even in some of the programs that I use, like for email, I use Active Campaign, and they have little suggestions, AI trying to suggest, spelling. And I always use PS. So many copywriters do. Hello. And it wants to change it to also all the time. I'm like, that is not what I'm saying. I want it to be a PS because it's a PS.
Right. Yeah. Listeners, whatever your opinion is on AI, I would encourage you to you still need to know how to write great copy. Whether you choose to use AI or you choose not to, the fundamentals of understanding how to communicate and what really matters to your reader are important. And if you don't understand that, you're not going to be able to even take something that AI generates and determine whether or not it's actually good. So we'll shift away from that now, but if we need to come back to it for any reason, that's totally great with me. I want to talk about your journey into this spiritual side. I want to hear about what happened with the cancer. Can you talk about that?
I can. Interestingly enough, I was working on my marketing book when all of this went down, and it was a really interesting time, but I'm going to back up even prior to the diagnosis, because what happened is I was sitting in my office, it was 2015, and I got a divine download. I've got a very deep relationship with God. I do a lot of praying and meditating, and I get these divinely guided messages. My business was divinely guided. And the message said, you are going to write a book, and it's going to be about healing with love. It's going to be called Spiritual Sugar. And I kind of freaked out. I'm like sitting in my office like, wow. Okay, wait a minute. Let's have a little conversation here, creator, because you already have me teaching marketing with integrity, which is sort of an oxymoron in the industry that I'm playing in. And I've been, kind of driving an uphill battle here with getting people on board with this. And now you want me to do what and write about healing? I didn't even feel like I was a healed person. I think we all, it's a continual thing. So I journaled about that and tucked that away. And then fast forward to 2 years later in 2017, I was having some massive health issues. I wasn't sure what was wrong, but I knew something was really wrong. I was overweight. I was having headaches and vertigo and all kinds of different other symptoms. And I was, just kind of trying to figure out what was going on. No one knew what was going on at that point in time until a doctor finally asked me if I thought I had cancer. And I don't know, a little thing precluded me from knowing that, like never going to medical school. I was there for their expertise, and that
the doctor asked you.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. That ticked me off. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
okay.
I mean, yes, I'm highly intuitive. I do get God nudges and divine downloads, but I'm not, I'm not a doctor. It's just true. So I was sitting in my office again after that, just thinking like, oh my gosh, that had never even crossed my mind. I mean, I was 47 when that happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow. I was sitting in my office kind of thinking to myself, did I kill myself for this? And what is this? Like what is going on here? And I got another message that said, don't worry, you're going to heal this with love. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remembered my journal entry. I pulled it out. I hadn't torched that one yet. I do sometimes torch them. And, looked and I was like, Spiritual Sugar, that's a great name. Wow. Bought the domain on the spot and in true entrepreneurial fashion, built the brand out while I was healing.
Wow.
And yeah, it ended up that it was a pretty fast growing and aggressive type of throat cancer, base of tongue cancer. And I really had to push to get the care that I needed. And if I would have listened to that same medical professional that asked me if I thought I had cancer, I wouldn't be here today because she kept telling me that it was an abscessed tooth and I knew it wasn't. And I was getting to the point where I couldn't even breathe. I mean, my airway was cutting off. I was having a hard time swallowing and I had to call every day to push to get into the ENT to get the biopsy because they're so booked out. And that's true for, even today with physicians, especially now after everything we've gone through the past several years. So finally went in and had a biopsy and the ENT was great. Really good guy. He said, it must feel good to know you're not crazy because you've got something the size of a walnut growing in your throat and we got to get that out of there. And I chose not to do chemo or radiation. I did a lot of research and, a lot of informed decision making there. I did have surgery. Didn't need to get that cut out, but I did everything naturally, everything else. Complete reset in diet. I joke that I quit my 4 favorite food groups, coffee, wine, chocolate, and cheese, all cold turkey. Thought that would kill me. I really, really did, but it didn't. I feel 100% better. Now every once in a while I'll have a glass of wine, but I had to create even more moderation than I was striving for before. I had to cut it out altogether and processed sugar as well. I removed that from my life too. So I released in under a year just from walking and changing my diet over 40 pounds. And I was technically obese, Tony, believe it or not. For my 5'7" frame, I was carrying like 189 pounds. And that's an embarrassing thing to admit, but I think it's also a really important thing to share because especially as entrepreneurs, we can get really caught up in just working, and then not taking that great care of ourselves. And I learned the hard way that that's not the best way to go.
Yeah. So you say it's an embarrassing thing to admit. Why is that embarrassing for you?
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone wants to admit that they were not taking that great care of themselves. I mean, I was carrying a lot more weight than I even realized. And the embarrassment there for me is really that I had lost touch with myself. I wasn't really fully in my body. I wasn't taking great care of me. And really that does need to be the priority, but it's easy for it not to be, especially if you own your own business and you're the only one doing it all. That's been a lot of pressure. So there's times when you can overeat or you can overdrink or you can do all things. There's certain sides of being an entrepreneur that aren't always glamorous, but I've course corrected all of that. And I'm so happy. And I'm so glad that I have learned so much about nutrition and health and faith. It took a lot of prayer and a lot of faith to get through all of it. I mean, I went in for surgery. I was in the hospital for 6 days. I had a feeding tube, which horrified me as well. That didn't make me happy at all. I don't want a feeding tube. And they said, you're going to have to go home with a feeding tube. And I said, I'm absolutely not going home with a feeding tube. And so I just made a point of making sure that I could eat something and get rid of that feeding tube because I was not going to go home with it. And so I was able to go home without that. But it was such a journey. I always tell people we really cannot take any moment or second for granted. We are not promised tomorrow. And in 2022, I received the all clear, no evidence of disease. And that's when I published Spiritual Sugar. I published that on 11/22/22.
Wow. That's a great story. You had this vision. You said 2022? You published it?
That's when I published the book. Yes.
So my math isn't good. 2015, you get the vision.
Don't make me do math. We're writers. We don't do math.
2010. Let's see, 2015.
It was 5 years later that I
2020. Okay, 7 years later. Right. My math sucks today.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
From when I got the first download about it. Yeah. 7 years later, but 5 years from having, the treatment. There we go.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, how did your family or those closest to you like respond to you when you decided not to do the traditional methods? Were they supportive or
Well,
did they?
Tony, everyone thought I had lost my mind. No,
Yeah.
seriously, no. My parents were very, very supportive. I mean, they were worried, but they have always allowed me to make my own choices. And actually, they kind of say that they didn't have a choice. They said I came out just questioning everything from the very beginning. So that's nothing new for me, apparently. But I kept it really quiet. I kept it within what I call my sacred sphere of influence. So I knew that I was being guided by God every step of the way of what to do. I was led to alternative modalities, which aren't even really alternative. They're ancient wisdom that have just been pushed aside for whatever reason. And I had to keep it really quiet. And I remember I was very, very involved with the Women's Speakers Association at that time on their leadership team. And I'd been involved since before they were even born. And my friend, Gail Watson, who runs it, I remember telling her, look, I'm going to have to take a step back because I'm going to heal this with love. And she thought I was nuts. She really did. She's like, what do you mean you're going to heal this with love? She was really concerned. You've got to, it's cancer. You've got to, be proactive. And then later she said, I get what you meant, because she saw I was just walking in nature all the time. I would walk for hours a day and do all of these different, go to the farmer's market, make sure that I was drinking pure water, do all of the things that I could possibly do. And really, while facing it, I just had to ask myself, if this were my last day, is this what I would want to be doing?
How did you maintain a intentional, like focused, positive mindset through all that?
Lots of prayer and meditation. And again, I was led to really amazing people and resources. One of my top resources was a book by Dr. Kelly Turner called Radical Remission. And it's fantastic stories of people who have had, she's calling it, radical remission, but often it's called spontaneous remission. And what she had found is that she was a cancer counselor and she was hearing about all these spontaneous remissions. And she's like, I don't think it's spontaneous. So she went back and became she got her PhD in cancer research, became a researcher and researched all of this and connected all the dots and then wrote a book about it. And the 9 factors in her original book that she found, of the 9 factors, I think only 2 were tangible things. The rest are really mindset and spirituality. And it was really amazing to find that information and to read stories of other people who have actually done this and know that there was hope and that it is possible, right? So that was a big, big thing. And really, I was honestly blessed. I was surrounded by really amazing people. And, I just also, interesting thing. I don't really know how to explain this, but I reached a place of surrender where I was like, okay, God, if this is it, I guess this is it. And thank you. Thank you so much. My world is beautiful. The world is beautiful. I've had a really good life. There's a few things that I'd still like to do. One was write my books and go to the rainforest, go to Italy, meet my soul partner. Wrote my books. Well, I'm still going to write a couple more. Did go to the rainforest. I went to French Polynesian Samoa and checked that out. Haven't been to Italy yet. Haven't met the guy yet. That's okay. But I just had to look at, what is it that I really want to achieve in life? And am I okay if this is it and I'm checking out? And I was like, you know what? I am okay with that. I didn't want it to be the case, but I was like, you know what? We're not promised tomorrow ever. So thank you, God, for everything that you've given me. And I'm just going to put it in your hands and you tell me what's next. And if you want me to write this book and do these things, then let's do this. And you show me what I need to do. And I was shown.
That is super powerful and very wise. Absolutely. I can attest to having the similar experience, well, the exact same kind of experience, different circumstances with surrender, where I got to the point where just stopped fighting and accepted, okay. And then everything shifted. It's so amazing. Getting to that place of just, okay, I'm grateful. Thank you. And then there's the shift.
Yeah, it is. It's really miraculous, honestly. And everyone really thought I had lost my mind because they didn't understand why I was so calm. And I'm like, it's going to be what it is. But I just have absolute faith. I mean, I wasn't given the title of this book and this charge for it not to happen. So we have to listen. And I often tell people, pay attention to those God nudges, to those little hints of intuition, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes I call it divine downloads, whatever it is, pay attention, because if you ignore it, you will be shaken into situations that will require you to do the work that you are meant to do.
Oh, I agree 100%. Absolutely. Oh, one of the things that this is going to sound very sexist, and I hope, if somebody's offended, send me a shitty email, but women have such a greater sense of intuitiveness, like
It's
really
true.
being in touch. And for me, I think I was 40 years old before I even started paying attention to my intuition. Like, I would poo-poo things, right? I'd get these feelings and I'd rationalize it, I'd justify it, or I'd dismiss it because it sounded ridiculous. And it is so important. It's vital. Like, we have so much power as these amazing creations that we just don't tap into. And I have a saying that I've adopted recently. I said, women are the most perfect of God's creations. And that's why they were made last. Everything else was just practice.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, women can procreate and create life. I mean, that's
Yeah,
miraculous, I mean, that's not
that's
something I've
miraculous.
personally done. However, I totally respect that. And I don't think that we're always taught how miraculous we are, both women and men, quite frankly,
Right.
as these really special beings that are here on earth to do really great things. And I think everyone gets so caught in the fray that we don't stop and take time to really smell the roses. And I've had people say, well, that's kind of everything you did came from a place of privilege, right? You could spend copious amounts of time in nature and change your diet and do all these things. And to that, I say it's actually not a place of privilege. It's a place of choice. I was faced with choice points. I could choose to sit in front of the TV and eat bonbons and continue to gain weight and be unhealthy, or I could instead go for a walk. And that's what I chose to do. Or I could eat healthy food, and that's what I chose to do. And organic healthy food isn't actually more expensive. It's more time consuming because you have to learn how to prepare food if you don't know how to prepare food. Thankfully, I've always known how to cook, so that's not an issue for me, but many people don't. They just buy packaged poisonous things. And that's a big part of the problem with society now and with health.
That's a huge part. I think convenience, we've become a culture of convenience and therefore a culture that we can't sustain ourselves. I think there's an epidemic of victimhood, entitlement, dependency. And what you said is so powerful and so dead on. Everything is a choice. Everything is a choice. And everything is figure outable too.
Yes.
I believe that taking ownership for where I am in my life is the start of actually making a change. As you may or may not know, both my brother and I have trauma backgrounds, abuse, addiction, things like that. But when I was in my 20s, I had this victim mentality that even once I became aware of it, took a long time to shift out of. And even now, at 60 years old, that little sucker likes to show up and try and worm his way into my mindset, you know? And it's a different kind of insidious victim. One likes to justify, but this ownership, taking ownership from where I'm at, eliminates that. And from that ownership place, that is where the power of choice comes in, at least for me. Like, okay,
I love
I'm
that.
here. I got myself here. What am I going to do now? Rather than, I had such a terrible childhood. Just, well, you join the club. Oh, well, my dad was hard on me. I lost my mom. That's sad. I understand. And now what are you going to do? Right?
Right.
Because life is not going to deal any of us an easy deck. I don't care. Even those that are entitled and privileged, right? They're missing out on so many ways that are just not obvious to the material mindset. I
I
don't know if
like
that
that
even
you
makes
brought up
sense
the
what I just
fact.
said.
It totally does. And the fact that you brought up, trauma, abuse, and addiction, we've all experienced that in some ways, either personally or peripherally. And I write about that in the book as well. The book is in actually 3 sections. It's really pretty cool. I've got the first section is The Awakening, which is kind of my journey, but it's not all about cancer. throughout it, I have what I call spiritual sugar heart sparks. And those are journal prompts, which invite people to go even deeper. So there is a section that really goes into trauma, abuse, and addiction. And, I recommend that people have a therapist on hand when they move through it, because I don't pull any punches. I'm really honest about the things that can impact our health, because if we don't deal with those things, it will manifest in disease. And there are scientific studies to prove that. So I'm not just making this up. And so I have over 30 different spiritual tools that I overview in the book that people can use to help fortify themselves, to help heal. And then the final part is the 7 spiritual sugar principles. And I don't want to get all into that, but it's broken up in sections to lead people on their own journey home to themselves. Because what I really want people to do once they read this love letter to humanity is to start taking such good care of themselves that they don't ever have to face a wake-up call like I did, because it's not fun.
Sounds amazing. This book really is kind of the lessons that you learned as you walked through your healing process, and to walk somebody else through.
It is, and it's so funny. I had a book club read my book and asked me if I would Zoom in and talk to them. And I'm like, of course I will. And I'm happy to do that. I don't charge people for it. Let's talk. And they were so funny. They're like, well, you couldn't have possibly tried all those modalities. I'm like, oh yeah. And I didn't even put all of them in there. Those were just the ones I remembered. There'll be another book. Don't get me wrong. I've discovered more things that I need to write about now, but they were amazed. And I said, I'm not going to write about something if I haven't tried it. I'm not recommending that anyone, jump in and try all these things at once. It was over a period of time. Right. And some of them I still keep in my personal practice, my personal spiritual practice, and some I don't. I tried them and maybe it was helpful, maybe it wasn't. I don't really know, but it was interesting, at least. And so the things that really struck me and that stood out to me throughout my journey, I included in the book.
Lisa, do you do any speaking on this?
I do. It's so funny you should ask. I do. And I love it. I actually just spoke this was kind of an interesting thing, because most of the time I'm presenting about marketing, but now I've got the book. So that's opening all kinds of doors. I just recently spoke at the Southern Oregon Human Trafficking Disruptors Summit. So that's a pretty heavy duty topic. And they brought me in to speak on both days. At the end of day one, after all of these horrifying stats and information had been dropped, then it was up to me to talk about self-care and kind of bring the crowd up. So I got a sponsor so we could gift a book to everyone in the audience, because the people that are there are doing such good work and are willing to look at the tough topics that most people aren't looking at. If we don't look at these things, we're never going to heal humanity. And it's really important that we do that. So I've spoken there. I also spoke at a breast cancer fundraiser and podcast interviews, of course, but absolutely, I do. And I will be doing more of that. And it continues to just grow very organically, which is so beautiful. You're on the right track when things are happening that way.
Oh, I would love to hear you speaking at more. I would love to see you take this message to as many people as possible. It sounds extremely powerful. I've got to get your book and read it.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy. Yeah, I would love for you to have it. And I really want as many people as possible to read it. And the other thing that I want to do with the book, and this is so exciting, and it's fun that, my marketing can come in handy to help with marketing the book. I just had a friend earlier say, are you going to teach people how to do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just having fun doing it right now. But something else that I'm looking to do is to get philanthropic sponsors who are very passionate about specific causes, such as, domestic advice. So women's shelters, for example, to get philanthropic partners to come in and sponsor drop shipping books to those places so that this healing guide can be there for people that really need it. I'm actually in contact with someone that is involved in the Last Prisoner Project, because I want to try and get them drop shipped to prisons, to women's prisons, and to men as well. I mean, the majority of my clients are women, but this is not exclusive to women. In fact, I talked about that at the Human Trafficking Disruptors Summit. And I said, listen, one of my editors said, Lisa, you've got to acknowledge that this is also for men. And I'm like, oh, you're right, because I tend to write to women. And so I said, I know that this book will find its hands into many good men as well. And so this is for all of you. And after the fact, one of the gentlemen there came up to me and he said, I just really want to thank you for saying that, because we don't get permission to do self-care like women do. And it really made a difference. And I was like, oh gosh, thanks. You're welcome. It was such a cool, pivotal moment. And having being able to gift the book to the people in the audience. I mean, those are the things that this, again, it's my love letter to humanity. It lights me up, and I definitely want to do more of that for sure.
I remember reading something on your website from one of your clients. I don't know what you were talking to them about, but the response was you really lit up when you talked about singing. I think it was singing.
Yes,
And I get that sense when you talk about this book from you. Like you really light up
it's
when you
true.
talk
And
about it.
I love that you bring that up, because that was really fun. In fact, that was Natasha Neese. She has a band called Living, Love, and Lead. She's moved down to the LA area. She's making her music work. When we worked together, it was about a women's empowerment business that she was going to do, which she could have done in rocked as well. We've become really good friends, but it
Oh,
was such a pivotal moment. And so she's been, kind of on this journey with me through all of it too. And I'm cheering her on. She's cheering me on. And it does. It makes a difference. I mean, I love everything I've been doing with Right On Creative, but when you've been doing something for 20 plus years or longer, because I worked at ad agencies and radio stations and things before that, it's time for a little bit of to freshen things up a little. And this has helped do
right.
that in many, many ways. And also, I mean, I know I'm doing good in the work that I do with Right On Creative, but at the same time, I'm helping sell other people's products and services. This is mine. This is really mine. And it's basically, through me but not of me, if that makes sense. It's all divinely guided, and it's my message, and it's my mission that the creator asked me to share, and I just don't think it's a good idea to argue with that.
Absolutely not. Yes. Yeah. Definitely do not want to balk at that one. That's
No,
great.
I'm like,
So
okay, I'm doing it.
yeah, good. And this is important for anybody listening. Like if we can spend our lives doing the things that we think we're supposed to, doing the things that we think we have to. And the truth of the matter is you get to choose what you do. You get to choose it. You don't have to do something. All right. And that's going to take a little bit of reframing for somebody to sit and think about. Whoever's listening to like, well, I have to do this and I have to do that. Well, I challenge you to think about that. Do you have to, or do you get to? But if I don't want to get to the end of my life and look back and say, man, I really wanted to do X. I really wanted to do Y. I really wanted to do Z, but I never did. And why? I was afraid. I didn't think I could afford it. I didn't think I would succeed. I didn't know how. Like, my God, just step into it. And if you've got some kind of a divine, like, mission, like this edict that, like, here's what I want you to do. And then you ignore it. You don't go do it because you come up with all kinds of excuses for why not to.
Right.
Being on mission is so powerful.
Well,
It is.
what's really interesting, and I didn't tell you this part of it. So I grew up in very rural Northern California in an unincorporated area. And books were
Okay.
my best friend growing up. I'm an only child as well. And we had a bookmobile that would come out. It was a mobile library that would come to us because it was a tiny town. At that time, there were two
Yeah.
bars and a store. Now
Wow.
there's just a store. Anyway, the bookmobile would come, and I would go and I would pour through the books, the Caldecott and Newbery Award winners. And I had a dream, even as a small child, that I was going to be an award winning best-selling author. And so when the book came out and it hit bestseller on Amazon, I was like, yay. And then when the American Writing Award came out in the spirituality category, I was like, I did it. And that little girl in me was so happy, and now what's even cooler, and this really lights me up, the book is on that same bookmobile driving around those hills where I grew up.
Oh, wow. That is wonderful. Gosh, what a full circle. Yeah, that's
Yeah, and I'm
amazing.
doing book signings and things at bookstores too, which is super fun and exciting. And it's just so mellow. It's just so fun. I have one coming up this summer in Eureka, California at Eureka Books, and it's going to be so fun. I can't wait.
That sounds extremely fun. Yeah. So, Lisa, as we're coming to the close of our time here, a couple other questions I want to ask you. I've got a sense for how you're going to answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you want people to remember about you?
I think that I just followed my truth, really, and followed my heart and did everything with love. I think that's it. It's all about helping others too, for me. I mean, definitely, I'm much better at taking care of myself now after facing mortality, but I want to make a big impact in the world, and I want people to really, really take good care of themselves. And I want them to live from their heart and follow their dreams, period.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's my experience of you. That's absolutely how I experience you. Yeah. That energy comes across super powerful. And then if there were an opportunity for you to go back and have a conversation, let's say with 15-year-old Lisa, what would you say to her?
Oh boy, she was a handful. That's a good question.
Yeah. So was 15-year-old Tony. Yeah, totally.
I guess, I think I would probably encourage her to be a little bit more focused, but I think that being multi-passionate and interested in a bunch of different things ended up serving well for me anyway. And I think I would also tell her that it's going to be okay. You're on the right path, even if it doesn't feel like it right at this very moment. Because at that time, I don't think I really was. I didn't always make the very best choices.
Sure. Well, that's the folly of youth, right?
Right.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
What's your vision for the future?
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm really trying to live day by day and really enjoy every moment. But I would really I'm going to have, actually, this is a vision that I've had for a while that came through. So I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm just going to say it because I keep telling people that. There will be another spiritual sugar book coming out. I would love to actually get a contract, $1 million contract that's never been seen or heard before, where I actually get to retain my rights so that the publisher doesn't try and take them all from me and not allow me to do the things that I want to do, because that happens if you don't negotiate right. And I would just like to sprinkle way more spiritual sugar throughout the world and get more people tapping into faith and health, period.
I love that. All right. So everybody who's listening to that, you now know Lisa's vision. I want you to do your part to help that become reality by sharing this and talking about it and buying her book. And speaking of those things, Lisa, tell me, how can people get your information? How can they work with you? How can they get your book? How can they get some of this amazing wisdom and life-changing transformation that you've got to offer?
Sure. So for help with messaging and strategy, that would be a Write On Creative thing. So go to writeoncreative.com, and that's WRITE, writeoncreative.com. And for all things spiritual sugar, go to spiritualsugar.com. You can order books there. Books are available also on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And I encourage people to go to your favorite local independent bookstore and ask for it by name. Have them order it for you. I like to support indie bookstores. In fact, when indie bookstores carry my book, I promote their bookstore on my social and share so that they get more exposure, because bookstores have to stay. Back to the AI thing, nothing is ever going to replace an actual hard copy book. So support your bookstores.
Yeah, I love books. I can't even store all my books in my house. I have them in my storage shed, which sucks. But
I just tried going through to
books.
Put together a box that I could release and get rid of. And I'm like, oh, I just don't think I can do it.
It's the hardest thing in the world, right? Like, yeah.
It is.
I still have books from back when I was a professional actor that are packed up. I'm like, I don't want to get rid of these. So yeah, I love them. Anyway, Lisa, thank you so much for spending time with me today. This has been an amazing conversation, and you brought so much value. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I cannot wait to see what you do next on this spiritual sugar journey. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm curious too. I have to approach it all with curiosity. Thank you. It's been my pleasure, Tony. I really appreciate you having me.
Awesome. All right. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again. I'd like to reconnect with you and find out what the progress is. So for everyone else, please go check out Lisa's resources. She is an amazing human being. I've watched her for many years and seen her come through a lot of stuff. So you just got the tip of the iceberg in this interview today. I guarantee you there is so much value and so much amazing stuff that she can do for you. So if you want results, if you want transformation, please take a few moments and go check out what Lisa has to offer. Thank you for listening, and I will see you guys in the next episode of Hero Up. Thank you for tuning into Hero Up. I hope today's episode challenged you to step up as a hero in your field and provided you with valuable insights to express your unique voice and message. If you found this episode helpful and motivating, please leave a review and share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes and amazing guests. Until next time, find your voice, share your message, live your mission.